Hello, this video is about essay body paragraphs. That is, the body paragraphs of an essay. Let's start by reviewing the basic essay structure in English. Say what you're going to say it, and say what you said. Just to be clear, this video will be about the say it part. All right, let's get started with our look at body paragraphs. Essay body paragraphs are very similar to standalone paragraphs. So if you have learned how to write paragraphs in school, then this will be very similar to that. Start with a sentence that introduces the topic of that paragraph. So just like the whole essay starts with say what you're going to say, and then say it, and then say what you said, every body paragraph is also the same. You start with a sentence that introduces the topic of that paragraph. You then support and explain your ideas. Now there's two words here that I want to emphasize. Essay body paragraphs are very similar to standalone paragraphs. Yeah, very similar, not exactly the same. So so there are a few things we need to rearrange. You see what I did there? Yeah. It feels good to recycle too. I'm using recycled letters to make this next slide. It feels good to help the earth. Okay, let's get started. So, first of all, the topic sentence must connect with the rest of the essay. Now, if you're writing a standalone paragraph, there's nothing to connect to. But if you're writing an essay, and I will say this several times through this video, each paragraph has to feel that it is part of something bigger. Okay, it's not just a paragraph that is by coincidence that is close to other paragraphs. It has to feel like one big piece of writing. We call this cohesion. Okay, now there may be other connections in the paragraph. There are other facets. There are other parts of cohesion we could talk about. But what I'm talking about here is the way that the topic sentence connects the whole paragraph with the rest of the essay. Lastly, a concluding sentence is not necessary in the body paragraphs of essays. We'll talk about that a little bit. Right now, we're going to start talking about cohesion. So, I'm going to change things up just a little bit here. What do you see? Well, you see 5 houses. Well, those aren't houses, they're paragraphs. Okay, they're houses, but I want you to pretend that they're paragraphs. As you can see, they're kind of close to each other, but there's no real connection between them. So what we need to do when we use cohesion, it changes this from paragraph town, and we come and we build our magic road, and now we have Essayville. All right. So instead of having different paragraphs that each one is kind of its own little thing, and they just live next to each other on the page, we need to tie everything together so that it becomes one larger, longer piece of writing. By linking and connecting paragraphs to the rest of the essay, you go from having several pieces of individual writing to having one complete essay. So let's take a look at the topic sentence. First of all, it gives the topic of that paragraph, and it does that through the controlling idea. We'll look more at that again later. And then it connects the paragraph to the rest of the essay through cohesion. And again, we will look at that as well. By the end of the topic sentence, your reader should know exactly what to expect in the rest of that paragraph. And your reader should see how that paragraph fits with the rest of the essay. Sometimes it's possible to write a 2-part topic sentence, so 2 sentences doing the job of one. We'll see that later, but at first, and kind of as a first step to doing this, I would suggest that you stay with a 1-sentence topic sentence. Let's look at an example body paragraph, and when we do this, we're going to be looking for a few things. We're going to be looking for cohesion. We're going to be looking for words and phrases that tie this paragraph to the rest of the essay. And we're also going to be looking for a controlling idea which tells the reader what this paragraph is going to be about. So here is our sample paragraph. So this continues from the introduction that was in the in the video about introductory paragraphs. So I'll just read the first little bit, just in case you're watching on a small screen. The first and most obvious way that cell phones have benefited people is that they have made personal communication much easier. So what part or parts of that demonstrate cohesion? What parts of that sentence tie this paragraph to the rest of the essay? Just take a moment. You can stop the video if you want to so you can take a look. Okay, I'll show you. So, the first way that cell phones have benefited people. So, the cohesion there is a couple of things. It says the first. So we understand that this is part of a larger group of ideas. And the way that cell phones have benefited people, that ties it directly to the thesis statement, which says that there are a lot of benefits from cell phones. Okay, so I've connected with those parts of that sentence. I've now connected this paragraph with the rest of the essay. But what's my controlling idea? Again, take a moment, see if you can find it. What is this paragraph going to be about? And there it is, the green rectangles. Personal communication, much easier. And so the rest of this paragraph you can read will support that idea. So let's check. Is this connected to the rest of the essay? Yes, it is. The first way that cell phones have benefited people. The next thing, is the topic of the paragraph clear? And again, yes, it is. Personal communication is much easier. Good. Let's move ahead. We'll take a look at the next body paragraph. We'll see how this does. So again, looking for cohesion. If you want to, stop the video and then see if you can find both the cohesion with the rest of the essay and also the controlling idea for this paragraph. Okay, so let's take a look. So here's the part that ties this paragraph to the rest of the essay. The benefits of increased communication are not limited to social situations. So I'm still talking about the benefits of increased communication, and I'm referring specifically to the paragraph before. It's not just that. And then here, the controlling idea for the rest of this paragraph comes in the second sentence. And again, I'll just highlight the part that mentions the controlling idea. Processes and procedures are now very much more convenient. Okay? So it's not just the social communication, it's that processes and procedures are more convenient, and then the rest of the paragraph supports that idea. So once again, is it connected to the essay? Yes, it is. And is the topic of the paragraph clear? Yes, this writer has done a good job. It's easy for me to say that because I'm the writer. Okay, let's take a look at the next paragraph. Okay. Despite these benefits, there are those who resist the use of cell phones. Now, what I have done here is I have two paragraphs that support the use of cell phones, and I have one that, instead of supporting one side, it tries to explain the arguments from the other side. Of course, it doesn't do a very good job, but that's on purpose. And then it makes those arguments, or it explains those arguments, and then it refutes them. It shows why those arguments are wrong. Now, when you do this, you have to be careful that you don't make the arguments too weak. If you make the arguments too weak, then you're not really playing fair. It's not really intellectually honest. One thing to remember is that this is a fairly advanced technique. Normally, when we start writing essays, we choose 3 arguments that support our idea. This is a little bit more advanced because there's 2 paragraphs that support our thesis, and then 1 that takes the other side, and then we show why that's wrong. That's a little bit, as I said, that's a little bit more advanced. If you're not ready for that, that's okay. Don't worry about it. On the other hand, if you're doing well in your writing class and you'd like to try something a little bit more ambitious, then you can go ahead and try this. Just be careful that your transitions are clear. All right, let's take a look here. So this is really important because I'm changing what I'm talking about. My signals have to be very clear with this. So do I have cohesion? Do I have a controlling idea? again, take a moment and look for yourself. Okay, let's take a look. Is there cohesion there? Yes, there is. And it's just this first phrase. Last paragraph, I used a whole sentence. Here I'm just using 3 words. Despite these benefits. Now, the fact that I said these benefits, that refers to the earlier paragraphs, the earlier arguments. Okay, so that's all I need. Cohesion doesn't have to be a big, complicated thing. Just a few words signal what has come before. Despite these benefits, and then the controlling idea is this, there are some people who resist the use of cell phones. So I'm going to be talking here about people in this paragraph, about people who don't like the idea of cell phones. So once again, is it connected to the rest of the essay? Yes, it is. Is the topic of the paragraph clear? Yes, it is. Okay, let's move on. And we're going to talk about supporting sentences. So we use supporting sentences to explain and to support your ideas. And it's really important that you show how you are right. You can't just say that you are right and expect people to believe you. You have to convince them. You have to show them in some way. First, explain and then provide examples or other support. A lot of times, something that students do is they will have their topic sentence and then the very next thing they write, they say, for example. Well, no, you have to tell me what your point is first and then you provide an example. So explain first, then provide examples or other support. Hypothetical situations are not examples. Okay? So if you say, if a person did this and then they would, that's not an example. Okay, that's a thought experiment, I guess we could say, but that's not an example. Anecdotes are not effective examples. You say something and you say, I know this is true because my neighbor Bill, one time when he was a little boy, no. An individual story, even if it's your own personal experience, an anecdote does not provide sufficient proof. It's not strong enough. It's just a story. It's just one person's experience. Finding a famous person who agrees with you is often not effective support. If you find a sports star who makes a comment about politics, that person isn't famous because he or she is a great thinker or a politician. That person is famous for something else. So just because a famous person agrees with what you're saying, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Religious quotes are not support, or at least unless you're writing in a theology class, I guess then it would be, but they're not considered strong enough arguments. They're religious quotes, religious texts are moral documents, but they're not considered sufficient support in an academic setting. In the same way, proverbs and idioms are not support. Okay? Do not invent statistics. You cannot make up information to support your argument. If you don't know statistics, and again, I'll remind you, the context here is that we were talking about classroom essays. If you don't know statistics, don't make anything up. You can say a great number. That would be okay. A large percentage. That would be okay. But you can't put a number on it. You cannot invent statistics. It's one of the worst things you can do in an academic setting. If you are providing more than one support or example in a single paragraph, make sure you use a transition from one idea, from one support to the next in the same paragraph. Otherwise, you will confuse your reader. Next, let's talk about concluding sentences in body paragraphs. So first of all, if we were just writing a single paragraph, normally you probably would put a concluding sentence. The problem is, it can be confusing to your reader because if your concluding sentence does a good job and it makes it feel like that's the end of the writing, then you're going to confuse your reader. Well, wait a minute. Is this the end? Is there more? Right? Because you disrupt the flow of the writing. It feels like You start, stop, start, stop. Okay, so in body paragraphs, very often you would not put a concluding sentence there because you don't want to interrupt the flow. Once you are finished explaining your point, you can just stop and you move to the next body paragraph. I really hesitate to say this because students sometimes try to do this before they're ready, but when you become a more advanced writer, you can sometimes use the last sentence of a paragraph to hint at the topic of the next body paragraph. You can't explain it, and you might not even want to use the specific term. You need to hint at it, and you need to do it very gently so that you don't, we say in English, you don't steal the thunder, you don't steal the point of the next paragraph. So again, that's fairly advanced. My advice to you is don't try it until you're pretty sure that you're ready. All right, let's talk about organizing body paragraphs. So there is no right way to do this, but there is one thing that you have to remember, and that is you have to choose the order of your paragraphs. Now, there are different ways of doing this. Sometimes you will hear people, you'll hear teachers, I've heard this on the internet, they say you should always do it this way, or you should always do it that way. No, that's not good advice. It depends on the writer, it depends on the essay, it depends on the topic. Every essay is different. But what you can't do is just let it happen. Well, that's the first idea I thought of, so I'll put it first. No. Make decisions about what goes where. Some of your choices, if you have 3 arguments, for example, you could put them from strongest to weakest. You could put them from weakest to strongest. You're kind of building towards the end. When I was writing a lot of essays, this is typically what I tried to do. I tried to end with my strongest argument at the end, but it didn't always work for every essay. So you have to understand the essay that you're writing, and you have to adjust for the piece of work that you are doing that day. Something else, another choice is chronological. So you would need to put the paragraphs in time order. And then there's also just logical concerns. If you're writing cause-effect, normally you put the cause first and then the effect. Now you could do it the other way around, but you would just have to be really careful with your transitions to make sure that your reader wouldn't end up being confused. So once again, there is no one right way, but don't just go by chance. Okay, so there's another question that we're going to look at, which is how much to write. So a lot of students, when they move from writing paragraphs to essays, some students are a little bit scared or a little bit intimidated. Other students really look forward to it because they say, you know what, now I'm really going to be able to explain my ideas. Now I've got enough room to be able to do that. And they get carried away. So in an essay, you have more room than you do in a paragraph to explain your ideas, but that room isn't unlimited. So explain your point, but don't over-explain it. Okay? So you have more room than a paragraph, but not unlimited. So please don't get carried away with it. All right. That's all I have for you today. Thank you very much. Have a good day.